Hello and welcome. I'm Zuhur Yusuf, the Learning and Events Associate here at CERIC, and welcome to the webinar. On today's webinar, we'll be exploring how to improve career development interventions with Inuit clients in both urban and northern communities. We are delighted to have Sophie Mathers from AXTRA here, offering strategies that highlight good practices and pitfalls to be avoided. Before Sophie gets started, I would like to take a few moments to introduce you to CERIC for anyone who may be unfamiliar with us. CERIC is a charitable organization that focuses on education and research in career counseling and career development in Canada. We fund research that advances knowledge in the field, like the Inuit career development research you'll be hearing about today. And bringing you learning opportunities like this webinar is also a key part of our mandate. CERIC has three main programs: the Connexus National Career Development Conference, held in Ottawa each January. We also have our contactpoint.ca website, which is a free online community for career development professionals, and the Canadian Journal of Career Development, which is also free to access. You can learn more about all of CERIC's initiatives at ceric.ca. We also partnered with AXTRA, formerly known as RQuODE, who conducted this research. AXTRA is an alliance of 90 employment counseling centers in Quebec with a focus on integrating underrepresented groups into the labor market. You can learn more about their work at axtra.ca. Also, some quick housekeeping notes before we begin. If you have any questions, you can enter them in the question/chat box on your screen, and Sophie will respond to them towards the end of the webinar. In addition, under the handout tab, you will find your copy of the reference guide. Click on the guide to download it. Then, after today's webinar, we will email you copies of the slide as well as the webinar recording. We will also be sending you a brief evaluation form, and we ask that you take just a few minutes to complete it. We also encourage you to engage with us on social media using these Twitter hashtags and handles you see on your screen. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter. Sophie Mathers is a career development consultant and has been working with the Inuit and Cree governments on the capacity building of their frontline workers. She's lived in Pinasuutitsaq for 3 years and has had the chance to train the Inuit employment officers of all the Nunavik communities. This experience allowed her to gain concrete experience on the reality faced by counselors working with Inuit clientele. She has been working on the development of employment services for the northern Quebec communities ever since. Now, over to you, Sophie.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you today. It's a real honor. I want to begin by thanking you for your interest today and to be here with me. I'm going to talk to you about this reference guide we created with AXTRA, Pinasuutitsaq. So let's jump right in because we have a limited time frame today and I want to make sure we cover everything. So here's the webinar's agenda. So briefly, I'm just going to talk to you about the project, where it's coming from. I'm also going to talk to you about how to use the guide. We really wanted this to be a user-friendly guide, so I'm going to give you a few tips on how to use it. And then we're going to look at the guide itself, the content. We're going to look at the Inuit situation in Canada and especially in Nunavik, Quebec. It's going to be just a brief overview because of the time we have today. We're going to look at the client's challenges that we identified throughout the research and explore some of the 50 strategies we propose in the guide. And this will be followed by a question session at the end. So the research project is led by AXTRA. And AXTRA contacted me at the beginning to be part of the project as a consultant. As you heard just a few minutes ago, I used to train an Inuit employment officer. I also trained Cree employment officer for the Cree Nation government. So this gave me an experience and a better understanding of the challenge that the frontline workers face when they work with the Inuit clientele in this case here. So the first phase was a project that we did to identify the specific feature of the employability intervention with Inuit clientele. It is based on a literature review and 26 interviews. And the 5 main themes came out of the research. They are the cultural identity and self-concept, values and beliefs, social dynamics, communication style, and learning methods of the Inuit. So we really looked at those themes and those features, and we tried we analyzed the results, and we looked at what's the situation in terms of employment and what are the impact of those features on the employability service we provide. One of the things that came up a lot when I worked with the Inuit employment officer was that what we were teaching them, employment counseling, client action plan, it was just not something that worked with their client. They kept telling me that it doesn't work with our client. They don't want to sit in the office. They don't want to talk about how they feel with us. You know, they just want a job. So this is why we did this. This is one of the reasons this first phase was created. It was also to better equip AXTRA employment center that they have one in Nunavik and one in Montreal. So we looked at the urban side of the Inuit intervention. This project was financed by the Quebec regional government and the Canadian Care Development Foundation, and the translation to English was financed by Canadian Heritage. You can access that research report on the website of AXTRA under publications. It is free of charge, and it's also available in French. So now the phase two. The phase two was the phase where we wanted to create a guide for the practitioners on the field. Because we know how it is, everybody's busy, don't have time to read a long report or, you know, just read bits and pieces. And we really wanted to answer to the need of the practitioners, you know, and provide some tools to better help the Inuit client. So one of the reasons why we did it too is because there is, to our knowledge, after literature review, almost no tool existing for intervention in employment with the Inuit. So we did a literature review for this guide. We also did semi-directed interviews and focus group with practitioners, Inuit and non-Inuit practitioners, but all practitioners working with Inuit clients. And the guide was reviewed and validated by 12 practitioners and 12 steering committee members. So before we go any further, I would like to ask you a question, a poll question. So I will let Zuhur moderate this part.
So we are launching the poll question right now, and we will wait for your results to come in. Okay, so it seems like the majority of you voted. So 10% said Inuit, 36% said First Nations and or other Métis, 33% said marginalized clientele, and 21% said other.
Great, thank you. So, well, this is very interesting. I have to say I had the chance to see the list of cities and countries people are coming from today, and we had so there was people in Alaska, in the USA, Ireland, Taiwan, India. So I'm very thrilled by this interest, of course. And I want to mention that this guide is for Inuit clientele, of course, but many of the strategies proposed can be applied to other clientele. I can say from my knowledge, for example, that many of those strategies apply to the Cree Nation in EUC Northern Quebec, and of course, to many other clientele. But the research was really based on the Inuit cultural aspect, so you can adapt it to your own practice. So Pinasuutitsaq is a guide for practitioners. Pinasuutitsaq means something to work with. It's the implement practitioner in Nunavik that proposed that name, because that's how they see this tool, you know, something they can go and use if they need it. And that's really how we wanted it to be used. So here we have a quotation from one of the employment officer in employment counselor in Inuit Center in Montreal. So it's a center that offers employment services to Inuit in the urban context. So the reference guide is useful to new and experienced practitioners. The concrete intervention tool and the examples of activities help to make sense to the clientele, allowing us to better help them to integrate the labor market in their northern communities, but also in urban context. So this guide is free of charge. You have it attached in your control panel. If you want to open it, you can follow with it. But if you want us to focus on the presentation, I included the images and print screen of the guide throughout, so you can follow the presentation as well. It's also available on CERIC website under publication. So the guide is focused on Inuit intervention. It presents concrete intervention and strategies. It is for busy practitioner friendly. It's busy practitioner friendly. It's something I invented, but you know, we know how it is. You're very busy between clients, or you try to build a workshop, but your participants keep coming. So we wanted it to be like very easy to use, and there are many documentation resources. We'll look at this in a few minutes. Okay. So the guide has 4 chapters. First chapter is contextualization. There's a very brief summary of the Inuit situation, presenting some of the major employment challenges and culture. But if you really want a better portrait of the Inuit culture and situation, I really suggest that you refer to phase 1. The report is very detailed and very interesting to read. Number 2 is challenges. So we identified 12 common challenges that we're going to look at. Strategies, we identified 50 strategies, and the resources. So the chapter is pretty much, the guide is pretty much organized as my presentation is. So before we go in the content, I just want to show you some of the features of the guide. So first, it's really easy to find what you're looking for because we have a table of content that's really detailed. First, you have the context, the chapter with the challenge, and then you have all the list of the strategies. So they are categorized under 11 things to facilitate your research. So you can take some time and just have a look at this before you start to look at the guide because it's really useful. We also included a list of all the examples and the activities that we included in the guide. So let's say you have a client who has issue dealing with anger. Well, you can click on the second activity, helping client deal with anger, and there you go. You have an example that once again you can adapt to your practice, but still, you know, it's something to start from. We also included a glossary because so many terms that we use in career development are used differently. They're changing. So we wanted to make sure everybody speaks the same language because it's been noted that it's really important to explain the concept that we talk about, that we take for granted to the Inuit clientele. So this is to help to explain to the client. There's a dynamic structure. So throughout the guide, you will see those legends with some information that we find that should be highlighted. We have a section with important information, some information just relevant specifically to Nunavik. We have the orange, that is the resource. So let's say there's a topic with, and there's a movie that we know of that exists on that topic. It's going to be highlighted like this, referring to it if you're interested. The box includes additional information, and the dot frame are the activity example, intervention examples. So this is an example of a box that you can find in the guide. So it's the Inuit culture in 10 keywords. So we wanted to give like an overview of the culture. That's coming also from the phase 1, but we synthesized it to make sure that you still can have the information if you want it without having to read the entire document. Example of resource. So as I said, you have the orange box saying if you're interested in mental health issue, you have a study on mental health services in Nunavik you can refer to. Example of activity. This is the wonderful activity Igloo of Life, developed by Mika Arnakak from Nunavik. And it was used by the Nunavut Arctic College for a prior learning assessment recognition program. That was really wonderful. And I won't go into details, but it's an example of activity, very good activity. Example of intervention. So how to set the boundaries with your client. When you work in a small community, how can you tell your client that you don't want them to talk to you at the supermarket, or you don't want them to call them at your house on a Saturday or on an evening at night. This is something that really affects the practitioner in the North. And finally, chapter 4, where we have like all this beautiful toolbox for practitioners. We have resources on Inuit culture, employability intervention tools, additional references such as books, films, short videos that you can use during a workshop, and a relevant website. So I really encourage you to have a look at this chapter at the end. So now let's jump in the juicy meat of the topic. Let's look at the Inuit situation in Canada and in Nunavik in North Quebec. Like I said, it's going to be a very brief presentation because of the time, but you can look at the document for more details. So Inuit live in Inuit Nunangat. According to the 2011 census, 59,000 Inuit live in Canada. It represents 4.2% of the indigenous population of the country and 0.2% of the entire population. There are 53 communities situated north of the 55th parallel, and it's a 500,000 kilometer square territory from Labrador to the Northwest Territory. The Inuit in Quebec, there are 14 communities, all coastal. There's a population of 11,700 Inuit living, and 900 of them live in Montreal, so in an urban context. And the very wonderful statistic is that 99.1% of Nunavik Inuit from Quebec speak Inuktitut. So that really demonstrates the strength of the culture, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. There are no roads to access the communities. I think that's an important information to share because, of course, it has an impact on their mobility when it comes to employment. But yes, the culture is still very strong. The language is much spoken. So it's a great experience. When you go there, it's a real unique cultural experience. So the labor market situation in Nunavik is not the best, as you can imagine. The unemployment rate is 16.3, was 16.3% in 2011, and that's more than the double of the provincial rate. So, of course, it's a high rate. Some of the reason why the rate is so high in the north is because of the remoteness of the communities, no access to roads, to go to another community for another job, for example, something you're more qualified to do, or limited diversity of jobs. There are 2 mines in the northern Quebec, but still that requires to fly out of the community, and you do a schedule like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So it's not easy when you have children and you're close to your family, you don't really want to leave. Local and regional employment opportunities that require more skilled labor, and limited number of professional Inuit role models. This is changing. There are more and more Inuit leaders, Inuit professionals, Inuit getting training. There's a doctor Inuit now. So this will really help the motivation for youth. That's really important. In the South, it's a more competitive labor market. There's discrimination. There's a big culture shock when they arrive, and a lack of professional network. So now I want to look a little bit more closely to the limitation of the Inuit when they want to enter the labor market. We're going to look at a little bit of a darker side here, but I want to reinforce that there are wonderful strengths in the culture, the Inuit culture, and that's how we build the strategies that I'm going to present after. So the challenge identified are the following. I will go through them quickly, so we don't have too much time to go into details, but I'll try to give you one statistics for each at least. I'm just gonna check the time. So first challenge identified, and it's kind of an umbrella. The first two challenge identified are kind of an umbrella over the rest of the challenge affecting them. Poverty. Poverty is a real challenge. In 2005, poverty affected 21 to 28% of households in communities. So these rates are 2 to 3 times higher than the rate in Quebec. So it's a fact. Nunavik is a poor region, and this affects a lot the employment service because the client come in the office and they're like, I need a job right now. Like, why are you talking to me about my leisures and what I like to do? I don't care. I need a job. I need money. You know, and that affects the service provided. It affects the pressure on the practitioner because they feel like they have to find a job right now. They feel like a placement agency, and they are not. But it also affects the sustainability of the client on the labor market because once they get the money, sometimes they will just choose to withdraw and go back to their activities because the need was answered, and now they don't need money anymore, so they stop working. So it's a double standard challenge. The second one is low education, low literacy. That's based on the statistics, official statistics. The rate of graduation in the region is 42%. But based on the observation on the field and throughout the interviews, practitioners said that the reality is more like 5 to 10% that really received the diploma from the provincial government. So that's affecting the employment services provided, of course, because it will be a challenge for the client to write the resume. It's going to take a lot of time to have the client write the resume, to just send it by email. And then we can go to the challenge number 3 with this. Like, of course, it affects their self-confidence. The client doesn't have so much experience. The only experience they had was going to school, let's say professionally speaking, and they go to school, they don't succeed, they drop out, or they don't have a good experience most of the time. So when it comes to find work, they don't really believe in themselves, but they need a job because they need the money. So it takes time with them to have them be more confident and believe they can do it. We always suggest actions to take when you have clients like this in the guide. Just want to say we don't just talk about the negativity, but there are solutions to this. The lack of motivation, so that's something else that came out a lot in the interviews. Most of the clients don't feel very motivated. We can understand the lack of motivation when there's not so many jobs available in the communities. You don't have a good experience at school. You don't have a good experience, in life sometimes. So it's difficult to be motivated in this situation. Lack of familiarity with government system and community resource. This creates problem when your client needs a social insurance number, for example, especially for older clients when the social insurance number was not distributed automatically after the child is born. So this could be really discouraging. Like, your client wants to work, but you have to go through all those steps of administration work, paperwork, and they don't know how to write or read so well. It can be very discouraging. Dependency, of course, drug and alcohol and gambling can be a big issue. Most of the criminal acts are made under the influence. 80% of the crimes committed in Nunavik were made under the influence. So that has a big impact, which leads to criminal record. Many clients have a criminal record, which limits the job opportunities, especially if they want to go in the mines or work in a school. That's difficult for them. In the urban context, it's the biggest population of clients. Like many clients go to the Inuit Employment Center because they are coming out of jail, and they go to jail south. They go out of jail, now they're on probation. One of their criteria, they have to look for work, so they go to the center. So like the motivation is not the same as the motivation of a person who just come because they really want to find work. So it has a big impact on the intervention as well. Mental health issue is a taboo, like in many other societies, many other cultures. But the lack of resources, especially up north, is important. When you have a psychiatrist or a psychologist that goes up only once a month in the community, the resources are limited, and the medication is not always taken by the clients. Once they have once they know they have a mental health issue, they don't always take their medication. So it's influencing the intervention. Sometimes practitioners are even scared to work with some clients. Homelessness and lack of housing. We say homelessness south. There's I'm just going to look at my statistics. In Montreal, more than half of the Inuit from Nunavik live beneath poverty line or are homeless. So it's a high number. And the same thing happened in the communities with the increasing of the population, the lack of house. You have overcrowded house, and you also have hidden homelessness. From like the people go from one house to another, they keep moving from house to other. That's creating a lot of that has a big impact. It increases the violence, it increases the abuse taken, and also it will, like, of course, have an impact on the client. If there are 15 people in one house, he tries to go to school, he cannot get up in the morning because someone was partying that night in the house, or he cannot go to the job interview because he hadn't sleep at all that night. So that's something that really happened. Violence and abuse. So it goes with what I just said. Disabilities is something that is very little documented in the Inuit communities. And what we know is that the impact on the employability will be that often the infrastructure don't have what is required for the participants, for the clients. But there are resources, like there are programs to support that, but clients are not so aware of them, and practitioners are not so aware of them as well. And finally, teenage pregnancy. That's something that we learned in the interview because it's just starting a few years ago. Young girls, 12 years old, 12, 13 years old, getting pregnant, dropping out of school, and once the baby is 1 year and they finish their Quebec parental insurance plan, they need to work, but they have no experience, they have very little education, and they have the children to support, so it's a new challenge that we identify. So now, after looking at the challenge, let's look at the strategies. The strategies, we developed them based on the beautiful and rich culture and all the aspects and the features we discovered in phase 1. We adapted our service, and we adapted the strategies to this. So, for example, the learning methods of the Inuit are really respectful and rich, and we try to use that to develop the strategies we're presenting today. So we have 50 strategies. They are divided in 11 teams. So we have for non-Inuit and practitioners, developing a relationship with your client, career and evolving concept, community-based approach, a question of self-confidence and empowerment, take your time, endless learning opportunities, the importance of culture, a question of communication, finding and keeping employment, and the importance of external resources and partnership. So we'll look at a few strategies, and I'll give you examples on how to apply them, and you can refer to the guide whenever you want to have more details, of course. So in the guide, each strategy is described, and then you have the actions that we propose. And once again, I'm going to say this, you can use those to adapt them to your clientele. You're the expert of your practice, you're the expert of your clients. So when you see the strategy, if they don't apply as it is to your practice, even if you work with Inuit, of course, we encourage you to adapt it. So I'm going to start with the strategy number 10, which is to explain the steps and concepts of the career development process. So that's something that we noticed. Often it's taken for granted that everybody knows what's an employment center and everybody knows what services are provided. But we really understood that it's really not the case. For most of the Inuit clients, they come thinking it's a placement agency, as I said before, and they want just to find a job. They want you to do the resume and find work. So it's very important to clarify the career development process and help the client to visualize it in its entirety. So we encourage to use like visual tables, or you can draw like the process to them so they really understand why they're doing this. Because if your client comes in and you just start right off the bat to say, okay, so let's talk about you, what do you like to do, and this and that, like they're going to be probably very uncomfortable. They're not going to know why you asked the question. That's why they're going to be uncomfortable. Not because they don't want to talk about themselves, not because they're too shy, but because they just don't know why you're asking those questions. It can be seen as nosy. We know for Indigenous people, sometimes asking questions about themselves, they're wondering, why are you asking me that? If I want to say something, I'm going to tell you. They like to tell their story. So anyway, this is just to say that we have to clarify the concept that we use with them. We have to explain to them what is an employment center, what are the services offered here, and take the time to go into details and give examples, give a lot of examples. So give the client an estimate of how much time and how many meetings there will be, so that they know like what to expect, and explore the advantage of setting long-term objectives. So why do we talk about a meaningful career? Why do we talk about studying and then a career? So an employment counselor in Inuit said the first contact is very important. Some clients expect immediate results. Explain the process fully. Also point out that instant results are very unlikely. So just clarify the expectations from the beginning, because it doesn't work well when everybody has a different expectation and different objective. Number 12, strategy number 12. So consider the impact of employability process on all aspects of your client's life. So this is another strategy that's under the team career and evolving concept. So these are really the strategies we gathered to clearly explain the career development process and what is the process we want to do with you. Why are we asking you to sit in the office with us? Why are we closing the door to ask you questions? So when you do that, consider the impact of the employability process on your client's life. We ask that you try to identify the areas your client's life matters most to them, their children, their mother they're taking care of. So really explore the family situation of the client, explore familial and social dynamics, like if they're having issues at home, if they are living in an overcrowded house, if they want to work somewhere, do they know the people working there? Do they have any issues with anybody working there? So in the northern communities, I'm sure like in small communities, everybody knows each other, and sometimes it creates tension, and it's going to influence their employability of their client. When faced with a decision, encourage the client to consult loved ones or friends. Give time to the client to go back home, talk to their wives, talk to their girlfriend, boyfriend, or parents to make a decision that it really, they all agree with, because we've seen some clients wanting to go study south, but the parents just don't support that. They don't support that. So unfortunately, sometimes this happens. There's a lack of support in the family because they need money, because they need the person to stay there to help with younger children, younger siblings. So this is really something to explore and explore the impact of choice. And this is on the client's various roles and the various area of your client's life. So I included the Inuit Holistic Lifelong Learning Model that was developed by the Canadian Council on Learning. I really like it, and I think it's a good visual to use with the clients when you ask them, you know, let's look at the culture, let's look at the people, let's look at the land. You can explore the family situation, you can explore the community situation, but it's also a good tool to use when you want to do some learning recognition outside of school or a work experience for clients with low self-esteem, for example. Strategy number 19, encourage clients to get involved in the community. So this is something that really came out in our research. The impact is tremendous. Clients often have low experience, low self-esteem, as I said before. So to get out and to be involved in the community is so important, and it brings them a lot of pride. And the employment office in Montreal tried it too. You know, they are in Verdun in Montreal, so they went out in the street to pick up garbage, and they cleaned like the canal the canal shore that's in that area, and they were like super happy about it. They were proud of having done something meaningful to the community and to be useful. You know, everybody wants to be useful, and when we look at the Inuit culture, we know the importance of community ties, and it's the worst feeling ever for them to be outside of it and not be useful and not be recognized by the community. So personally, I'm going to say this personally here, I really think it's the best strategy just to encourage clients to get out of the office and be seen by the community and help the community. It could be an activity like go help some elders to do their grocery. You take them to the grocery store, you walk with them, and then you bring the bags back to their house. Simple activities like that may not look like relevant to an employment strategy, but it really is good for the development of the client and their well-being. So encourage clients and encourage the community to recruit and involve clients in any community activities. Really, if there's a feast, if there's a race, a canoe race, go there. Even though you're not gonna show them a list of values or skills on that day, it doesn't matter. Like, they love to go outside, of course. They love to be hands-on, and they really love to be in the communities. They don't always have an opportunity, or they're too shy or insecure to go by themselves. Number 27, so this is in the theme, take your time. Don't have expectations of immediate results. Try to take your time, and to do so you need to make room for spontaneity. So for example, you have to be flexible and adapt to current needs of clients in the group and the community. From what we know and my experience on the field, clients never really respect appointments. Inuit employment counselors don't want to give appointments either. They don't really like to have a schedule and time frame like this. So try to be flexible in the appointment. Of course, having the clients coming whenever they want is difficult as well, because you end up with a super big workload in one afternoon, and then the next morning it's very quiet and nobody comes. So we suggest, for example, to give a time frame, like can you come from 1 to 4 on the Wednesday afternoon? That's an example. punctuality is always a big issue, and I don't like to say Inuit or First Nations are not punctual, but punctual. But I think it's important to explain to them the reason why, because we have no choice. When you work, you have to be on time. If you want to keep your job, you need to be on time, especially in the urban context where the labor market is more rigid. So once again, explain why. Why do we have to do this instead of just saying, be on time, or you're not on time, you're going to be fired, and so on. So take the time to explain the impact of very spontaneous behavior to the group during the process, on keeping your job. Like, what is the impact of you not showing up in there one afternoon? What is the impact on the rest of the group? Because you're not there, we wanted to do this activity, but we could not. It was difficult. So show the consequences. Describe the consequences, like I was saying. And one thing that's important, though, is like the Inuit really don't appreciate being confronted in front of other people. So it's always better to do that either in a metaphorical way, by a storytelling, like it was traditionally done, or one by one, and talk about it, discuss about it softly. Don't point out fingers and say, you were not there, it's not going to work. It's not the best strategy. What's going to happen if this happens is that the clients probably will just never come back. So that's not what we want. And this is a big challenge, especially when the Inuit clients work in another cultural environment. For example, if the Inuit work in construction, the foreman is often only French speaking, and they need, they know how it is in construction. They need to produce. They work 10, 12 hours a day. So if the Inuit is late, they're going to be screaming at them, and the clients will just withdraw. So never come back. So we have to face this situation, this cultural contrast. It's really that's all it is. It's a cultural contrast. So both parties need to be more aware of the situation. Suggest number 32. Suggest problem-solving exercises and activities. Inuit are phenomenon problem solvers. So really, we should use this beautiful strength to develop our activities and our intervention with them. So give an example of activities of problem solving. I have one right here. So you have it in the guide as well. So you give a scenario. Marcusi is a young guy. He likes to drink. He's looking for work, but nobody calls him back. So then you put your clients in a small group, if you have groups, and you ask them, what do you think Marcusi didn't find a job? What would you do if you were him? How could you help Marcus to find work? So it's very concrete. It's very easy to understand because it's concrete. So that's what Inuit are. They're problem solvers, they're survivors, and that's the best way to reach them. Number 36. So the promotion of the Inuit culture, identity, and language. It's so important. This is a quote from a report that was written for my Quebec society. We are Inuit. We will never become Halunat, non-Inuit, even if our present-day lives no longer resemble how our ancestors lived. Many aspects of Halunat civilization are now incorporated into much of how we live. However, our ancestry, our culture, our language, and our identity define who we are vis-à-vis the dominant society in Canada and in Quebec. We will always be Inuit. So I believe we should do almost everything we can to support the Inuit culture, to promote it. And in all the activities we do with Inuit land, it should be there. It should be I don't know how to say the word in English, but it's the soul of their personality, and very much the cultural identity really has a big impact on the self-confidence. The more proud and strong they feel about their culture, the better the confidence is. This is my own observation, but it's true. So promote activities and use symbols, myths, legends that are part of Inuit culture on a regular basis. Organize cultural days and workshops, and you can invite the family, the community to come and participate, elders, organize and conduct cultural activities, but always include the clients. Of course, they're the expert of their culture if you are not an Inuit. Include the clients as much as possible, involve them in the development of the activities. They really are the expert here. And conduct discussions about various cultural themes. For example, what is the role of work in the traditional lifestyle? I used that activity once with a group of youth on income support, and we had an elder that came to the classroom and talked about first he showed us how to build an igloo, and then he came a few days later to talk about what is work in the traditional life. And he said to the group, we never slept in, we were always up early in the morning, working till the dark, and so on. So it was very interesting, it was very empowering, and I think it was a motivational speech as well. If the activities take place in a non-Inuit setting, for example, in urban context, encourage the client to talk about their roots and their culture, and to share the similarities with the other group. Give time and space to have discussion. For example, have a lunch, Inuit lunch in the workplace. Invite the family, if possible, to see the person in his workplace. So create opportunities to share and learn in Inuit. So that's really important as well. When I give workshops, I always encourage clients to speak in their own language if they wish. Even though I don't understand, unfortunately, my Inuit is really poor, but I always validate, encourage that, because I think it's absolutely important. Ask clients if they prefer to translate what you say. If you can have a translator, of course you should have one. You can do a vocabulary word every day. You put a new word. So you, as a facilitator, learn the Inuit as well. Create tools in Inuit, promote writing documents in Inuit, and try to learn some of the words and expression, as a formal respect, or if you can learn Inuit, it's even better. In Quebec, we have a special situation too with the French. So we have in the Nunavik, we have Inuit, French, and English. So sometimes it's a bit confusing to master one of the language. So that's another element to take in consideration. And this is the last strategy I'm going to present today. So the number 49 is create partnership with other local and regional resources and organizations. So it keeps going that way, because today I presented you those strategies because I really think it's absolutely important to do so. So when you work in the community or in an urban environment, keep working with the other organizations that work for Inuit, that provide services that could be useful to your clients. Something that's always comes out when we do interviews, like nobody works together. We all say we want to work together, but we never work together. So I believe that us as frontline workers, as people working on the field, we can really be part of that and make that change happen by changing our own practice. So which leads me to this final question, just to think, let us go with this reflection on our mind. So how can we, practitioners, but also citizens, contribute to increase Inuit empowerment on the labor market? So what are the actions we can take to make this situation change, especially in an urban context where there's a lot of racial and stereotypes, prejudice? How can we make this change? Because it's absolutely important that the context change as well. We can work on the individual as much as we want, help the individuals as much as we want. If the context is not different, it's not going to work. So it's an aspect that sometimes we forget to think about because we're so focused on the client. But I think it's absolutely important. We are part of that. So I'm gonna take my breath. You have the list of the references I spoke about today here, and on this I will conclude. I want to say once again thank you for your interest. You have my my information here. If you want to ask me questions or discuss of any topic, I'm always happy to do so. And if you want to, you can also contact AXTRA, the organization leading the project. And yes, thank you. And I will let Zuhur monitor the question session.
All right, thank you, Sophie. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you again, Sophie, for sharing your insights today. Your easy to use and well-formatted guide is sure to be a useful resource for all. So I'm now going to ask you some questions. All right, so from Chantel Doyle, she says, can you repeat in a quick shorthand the strategies you identified today?
Yes. Well, if you want, you can go in the guide that's attached as a PDF in the handout. But I can just show you briefly the ones we looked at. But in the guide, you have the table of contents with all of them detailed. But the one we looked was explain the steps and concept of the career development process. Consider the impact of employability process on all aspects of your client's life. Encourage clients to get involved in the community. Make room for spontaneity. Suggest problem-solving exercise and activities. And okay, so that's the same one. Promote the Inuit culture, identity, and language. And create opportunities to share and learn Inuit language. Create partnerships with local regional resources and organizations. These are the strategies I presented today, but they are 50 in the guide.
All right. And Graziela also made a comment. She commends and agrees with your emphasis on strategy number 9, encouraging community involvement. As a former Nunavik teacher, she feels like this is very important. But she asks, did you find a job-seeking adult in Nunavik or in Montreal reluctant to volunteer in community alongside others who are performing similar duties where they could be paid? If so, did you have success stories where resilient job seekers continued volunteering and it supported a successful placement?
I hear what you say. When we say the word volunteer, first, often the clients, they don't know what it means, or they really don't want to do that. They're like, I'm not even paid, or why would I do that? So it's all about the way we present it. I would present it more as an activity, you know. This afternoon, if you want, we're gonna go and help out the community, and then you organize the activity as a practitioner, and you take them there. But I don't think having the client go do volunteer work every week from 1 to 5 on a Wednesday is gonna be the best strategy, of course. I think it's possible, but you have to look at who's your client first and see their motivation, because they need money. They really do need money, and when they work, they want to be paid if possible. So really, it's part of the process. You know, it's like, oh, we're going to go and help the community. There's a feast. We're going to help. Come with us. But I would not even mention the word volunteering or this kind of activity.
Absolutely. Also from David, how did you help clients who left their employment because of a problem with a supervisor? Or how did you help clients get past a fight or flight response?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I have first the question that comes to my mind is, was the employer Inuit or not? But no matter where the Inuit, whether the person is Inuit or not, when there's a difficult situation in the workplace and the client is fired or it's just not working, first I would explore the situation, see what's really the source of the problem. Is it a cultural contrast? Is it because the client has a communication issue? And then, if possible, I don't know the context you work in, but if possible, I would try to meet with the employer if it's in a smaller community. Or what I would do for the next time the person's trying work, I would ask the employer if and the client if I could go with him for a few meetings and then follow up, or you know, have a call if you cannot go outside of your office for time reason. And so this is something I would try to do. I hope I answer your question.
All right. And from Judith, she says, we work in an ROI-driven environment. Can you give us some data in terms of success of your program, especially how many interactions you need before you could match the Inuit client to a job typically?
I'm sorry, I don't know what ROI means.
Return on investment.
Return on investment. Okay. Well, right now, unfortunately, I don't have the statistics of the Employability Center, but I know their statistics were were good. You know, of course, it takes time before we have the clients on the have a success. Like, it's easy to check client employed, you know, but is he employed after 6 months? That's another issue. To better answer your question, I would encourage you to write to Gabrielle Saint-Cyr at RQuoDE. She's the one at AXTRA, sorry. She's the one working at AXTRA, and she's the project leader, and she's also working with the Employment Center more closely than I am, and she could share probably some of this information with you. But the feedback we had, what I can tell you, the feedback we had from the practitioner was really that it's not magical. It takes time. Sometimes it doesn't work. But this is so far what we found that worked the most.
Okay, so we've got an overwhelming response, but we have time for one more question. Chanzo asks, did you notice differences in challenges and opportunities based on sex and gender besides teenage pregnancy? Are there specific strategies for persons who may be returning to communities after incarceration?
I would say that my observation is that for the criminal record part of the question, when they go back to the community, it's challenging. They have the Community Reintegration Center, Community Reintegration Officer in Nunavik that support them with the reintegration. But of course, finding work when you come out of jail, sometimes people know what you did, and you know, depending on the crime you committed, it can really have an impact on the job placement. For the part of the teenage maternity, Zuhur, can you repeat that part of the question? If there's a gender difference?
A gender and sex difference besides teenage pregnancy.
Well, what I heard was of course, the young girls that drop out. I don't know if that's what you want to know. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. But the young girls, it's really them who drop out and have the children, and often the father is not even involved in the picture. So it's a big challenge for them and for the practitioners trying to help them. And for people with criminal record, it's also a challenge that the Community Reintegration Center work with the local employment officer or the employment practitioners, you know, to join their efforts to help the client reintegrate the labor market and go on with his life after prison.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you again, Sophie, for sharing all your wonderful research with us today. Sophie will be directly emailing all the other individuals who did send questions in. Watch out for an email, exactly. For everyone else, watch out for an email this afternoon with slides and recordings as mentioned. We will also be sending out a short evaluation form and would greatly appreciate any feedback you could provide. If you want to learn even more about this research and career development in different cultural contexts, then do join us at Connexus, the National Career Development Conference in Ottawa this coming January. And of course, you can download the reference guide on the CERIC website. Finally, let me close by thanking our webinar listeners for your participation. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.